Well, we're very fortunate today to have a very special speaker to us, Kelly Isola, Reverend Kelly Isola. She's a friend of CFUO. For the last 6 years that we've been on operation, I believe we've had Kelly multiple times come talk to us, and they're always enjoyable and inspirational. We're so happy that you could join us on this Easter morning, Kelly. You're going to be talking about the never-ending story, I believe.
Yep. Thank you. Good morning.
Go take it away, Kelly.
Oh, that was quick. I thought there was so much more. Let's get on with it. Let's get on with the never-ending story. I realized I got conditioned to very often it's a good 30 to 40 minutes before you actually get to the talk. So this is fabulous. Let's jump right into what I think is one of the most important pieces of when we spend time together, not me, but a message and a meditation and our learning and coming together. I call Easter the never-ending story because for me, it is a never-ending story. It isn't just a one-time-a-year thing. And coming from the perspective of as a minister, a spiritual leader, every year, and this has been for centuries, this time of year, at Christmas, like two big holidays like that, you're working on a talk and you think, well, yeah, this isn't it's not a big deal. I mean, the story's already written for me. What's to think about? We know how the story ends. And yet for me, there's a lot to think about because I'm just not capable of kind of doing a similar kind of thing each year. It's just not in my framework. It's not in my DNA. So I'm always looking for ways to engage the story, to, looking at historical and cultural perspectives, looking at, metaphysical interpretation. Just what does it mean for me each year? And how is it different? Because my world with Easter has radically evolved from the events of 2,000 years ago to something very different today. And this year too, I have the kind of an added piece of that, this past week, Passover started for our Jewish brothers and sisters. We're in the middle of Ramadan, which is the holiest month of the year for our Muslim brothers and sisters. And Ramadan is very rich, very celebratory, very a real outward expression of faith commitment. So for the three Abrahamic faiths to be having, some of the most important holy days and acknowledgments and actions to a commitment of their faith happening at the same time is not very often. It's about every 33 to 34 years. So this may be the only time, if you didn't realize, I mean, it wouldn't be the only time in your lifetime, but if it's maybe the first time you've realized it and maybe even gone a little deeper with what that means for you, it's a big deal. And each of those holy days and each of the stories that go with each of those holy days is not, they're not very dissimilar. There's a lot of, crossover. There's a lot of of stories of faith, and there's a lot of myth. And when I say myth, I mean it in a good way. There is truth, like capital T, in myth. It doesn't necessarily mean could be a lot of little t truth, like facts, but there's generally this ancient perennial wisdom in myths. When we look at, so coming back to Easter, if you just look at the four gospels, the four canonical gospels, Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John, and if you look at the different accounts of the resurrection story, because that's what Easter is, it's a story of resurrection. If you look at like who went to the tomb, who was there, who did Jesus appear to at the tomb, how did they respond to his appearance, what did those that saw Jesus, what did they go and do, and what did they say? And all four of them are very, very different. And the reason that I bring that up is because it kind of connects to what I said about myth, but it also it tells me that even then, when these stories were first being written down about Jesus, it's their perspective, their understanding, their learning, right? What it is they got from what they heard about this man called Jesus, who was wandering around, Galilee for a few years. And less about, okay, what's the truth, like factual, because it's not that for me anymore, and it hasn't been for a long time. So I take on Easter and other holidays in a way that is, I go back and look at, well, where does this story come from? What does it mean for me? And and how do I apply it in my life? And what do the characters mean, right? So there's some metaphysical or maieutic interpretation, like taking the story on and what does it mean in my life? I don't want to just say Jesus, he died, buried, rose again. And I'm not able to say the same thing every year because it takes on new meaning. And that's what Easter is for me, is certainly a journey of transformation, but it's also about the surrendering and coming to realize it's not just one time a year. We have 6 weeks of Lent, and then there's Holy Week, and it's not just Easter. I sometimes think about Easter that in terms of, okay, so what happens the next day? Like, what do people do on Monday? Well, they go back to work, or they go back to, whatever. But it's in many ways, it's kind of, okay, it's over, good, done, going back to life. And I think about it, when I think about it that way, I think about it in terms of, so this might be a little odd, connection, analogy, but when you think about, a parade, or if you think about, a big outdoor music festival, there's this big event and then everybody leaves. So what happens afterwards? Well, people are walking around picking up garbage, right? People are walking around putting things back in place. People are, or they go back home and get back into their life. And I have no idea what happens, after. And that's, I think, part of the beauty of Easter is we get to write the story. So for me, it's always year round, because we're always engaged in a crucifixion and a resurrection. And the cross, I want to say a little bit about the cross. Because I think sometimes we take every difficult thing in life and make it a cross. And we do have difficult things in our life, but I don't think all of them are a cross. I think more often than not, and again, keep in mind, this could change next year. I've had, here's a squirrel moment for you, an Easter squirrel moment, or maybe it should be an Easter bunny moment. This last year, I have, like if you look back on the last 10, 11 months, I refer to it as a year of destruction. And I call it that not because I'm so upset, and not because it's so absolutely horrid, or because I'm feeling like such a victim. It's just been lots of destruction, physically, financially, emotionally, spiritually. Like there's just lots of destruction and, things coming apart and falling apart. So the word cross has kind of taken on some different meaning for me. It really, if I look at this year of destruction, the cross are things that I didn't choose, and I certainly don't want them. It might be outside my normal order of life. It's things that have disturbed me, right, and injured me. But it's not places I would go necessarily or choose, but I can't avoid, right? I can't avoid the events. I can't avoid the deaths of 3 friends. I can't avoid the physical destruction, events that have gone on. I can't avoid, and I would never choose to go there, but that's where my life is. So I don't, I think about Jesus's cross as not, an inconvenience, but really, really a symbol, of cutting off a life, like cutting off life force to something that's really solid, right? So if let's say, I'll take my physical, there's this solid, life is moving on and I'm in the thick of it. And then a crucifixion or the cross is kind of cuts that off, right? For Jesus, it was the cost that he paid for confronting authorities of synagogue and authorities of the Roman Empire. So they're not, for me, crosses are not kind of the minor irritation or some of the things the irritations that tease us. And I think a cross is a symbol of not something that's a temporary discomfort, but something that's really life-changing. Like you can never unring that bell. And I know we don't necessarily in Unity talk about the cross, very often. And I know that, I can look up in the Revealing Word or the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, a definition from there, and I'm moving it into how I find it operating in my life and owning that, because I think often I might consider something a cross that's really more of an irritation as opposed to really interrupting and cutting off. Okay, because we use the term, right? This is my cross to bear, and we use that. And is it really a cross, or is it just more of an inconvenience and uncomfortable and, where you that's my Easter noise, right? Sort of like, there's the instead of a squirrel moment, the bunny moment, but there's also the Easter thing. So that's the cross for me. Then I want to talk about the crucifixion for a moment, and then I want to talk about resurrection and how that is for me. And then I want to talk about a couple characters that from the story of the crucifixion that some people may not be familiar with. So, and because I'm a word nerd, I'm always going to give you, etymology, right? I'm always going to give you, let's go back to what the word means. And the word crucifixion is a really old word, but the root of the word literally means fasten to a cross. So bind it to a cross. It goes back to Phoenician origins, and it really is about torture and misery. And for millennia, for thousands of years, criminals were hung or impaled on a cross. Crucifixion became the ultimate symbol of cruelty and death. So when I think about fastening to a cross, what does the crucifixion have to do with me in my life today? While I'm not being literally hung on crossed beams, I ask myself, what suffering have I been fastened to? Right? There's things that happen outside of me, right? The big accident I had in August that destroyed my knee, like what am I being fastened to? And then there's the opposite question of that is, what cruelty have I then fastened myself to? Right? Anyone like to stay in their misery or their story, or what's going on, or, have a friend or a loved one who kind of says, haven't you told this story before? Kind of thing. But when I look at the crucifixion, which means fastening to a cross, the two questions are, what misery have I been fastened to, right? Because there's things that happen in my life that I didn't bring on myself, right? There's stuff happens. It's not the choice word I would use, but I'm going to be polite. And what have I then chosen to fasten myself to? Like what am I? And that's the beauty of metaphysics, is that this stuff happens in life that you don't have a control over, but how do I respond to it? What am I fastening myself to and unwilling to let go of it? So the Easter story is about taking me much deeper into potentially a move to forgiveness for me and another. So, and here's the other piece. Am I fastening myself to someone else's suffering? Am I fastening myself to someone else's cross and unwittingly made it my own? Right? Which then, if I fasten myself to someone else's cross, if I fasten myself to my own, like really take it on, own it without, then how do I use this in my life and move forward to unfasten it? Then I become my own crucifier. And then Kelly goes, oh, no, there I am again, right? Like, I don't know about you, but there's moments where I go, ugh, there I am again, right? There's that Easter noise, ugh, like there I am again. There, oh my God, I'm so tired of hearing my voice. So think about that, the fastening to the cross. And then the resurrection, the root of the word means to appear, means to rise again. It means to appear. So to make visible. So to give voice to the crucifixion, right? To give voice to the suffering, to give voice to the pain, to give voice to, you know, the experiences that I'm fastening myself to give voice to what's uncomfortable, to give voice to pain and grief and anger, so that my own disciples, right, whether you know it or not, you have disciples, and the disciples are the beloveds in your life. They're your peeps, not the marshmallow ones, but they're your peeps. And they are the beloveds in your life. And sometimes our peeps or our beloveds, they may not be the people we really enjoy the most, but who is it in my life that is, think about the disciples and the, you know, what each disciple represents in the 12 powers. These are the beloved. So who in my world really is demonstrates, is faith, and who in my world is zeal, and who in my world is order. And sometimes those people may not be my most favorite people, but they are your beloved in life because of what they are being in your life. And again, for me, it's not a one-time event. Every time I realize that I have fastened myself to something miserable, it's time to turn and appear again. This is, for me, what makes it a never-ending story of creation, of Easter. This is what the earth does. After a natural disaster, this is what earth does. After death, right? It creates new life. It appears again and again and again. And so do we. So I look at it as a never-ending story. That's why I call it that. And you'll notice I haven't said much about Jesus. And yet, in traditional Christianity, certainly, the story of Holy Week is, Jesus' story. That's where we get the idea for crucifixion and resurrection from. And I need to remember that it's that and so much more, right? It's what do I take from that story and make meaning in my life to make it apply today? The other piece of it is that it's needing to remember that it's not a solitary journey. I think in Unity, we have a tendency to think about my personal transformation, my crucifixion, my resurrection. I'm not a solitary being. I don't live a solitary life. I didn't become fastened to something painful or miserable all by myself. And I need my beloveds to move fully into that resurrection part, into that appearing again, right? Into that showing up to life again, into showing up as fully human and fully divine, showing up as the Christ, right? Showing up as my most noble self. I need you to do that. And sometimes that means you're going to tell me things I don't want to hear, right? Being my beloved, I hope you would. So a couple of characters that I just want to share with you that very often we don't hear about. One in particular around this story of in Holy Week and Jesus' journey is, if you're not Catholic, you may not be familiar with the character Veronica. So Veronica is a woman from the time of Jesus. She may be the woman that in Luke reached out to touch the hem of Jesus' garment. She's not in the canonical Gospels, but she was written about in other scriptures and other writings. And again, it's one of those stories that it's a tradition, and it's a Catholic tradition. It's not that there's necessarily small t facts in it. But in the stories that are written about her, she was part of the procession as Jesus was carrying his cross. Most of us know about Simon, who stepped out of the crowd to help Jesus carry his cross, but Veronica stepped out of the crowd to wipe Jesus' face. Jesus is carrying his cross, he's falling, he's in pain, he's suffering, and she steps out and simply wipes his face of the sweat. And for me, just like Jesus, we are each unique expressions of the divine, and we each carry a cross. We each, are always having that, the cross, those things in life that are really the hard things in life, and we carry them with us. And so Veronica is this woman who steps out to offer compassion, to offer comfort, to offer care. So my question is, I've said that we don't do this alone. We don't do Easter alone. We don't carry our crosses. We don't move through crucifixion. We don't move through resurrection. We don't do any of that. There are elements we do on our own, but it's not a solo journey. It really isn't. So the question is, so here's, I already gave you a few questions, what misery have I been fastened to, right? In terms of crucifixion, and what has been fastened to me? And what of your misery have I fastened myself to? And in terms of Veronica, my question would be so are you being Veronica for someone in your life? Are you being Veronica for someone in your life? How often do I stop and notice someone's suffering, someone's crucifixion that's going on, right? How often do I stop and notice? And am I pausing to wipe their face? Who in your life is in the middle of an Easter journey, and how am I wiping their face? And that can look a lot of different ways. It can look like just showing up and being silent. It could be going to the grocery store. It could be, sending funny emojis so they at least laugh. It can be, getting on the phone. I mean, it go to the grocery store it can be any number of things. I had one of the most powerful Veronica experiences in my life this summer when I injured myself. I couldn't walk, I couldn't sit, I couldn't drive, I couldn't do anything. And I had people, I'm very connected with the Turkish Muslim community here in Kansas City. And I can't tell you how many of them stepped up and were Veronica. They just stepped out. They didn't ask me what did I need. They would send me a text and say, I'll be over Friday at 6:30. I'm bringing you some groceries. Or I'm sending my teenage boys over tonight to bring you food. It wasn't a question. They just stepped out of the crowd to wipe my face, metaphorically. So keep in mind that every day there are people, that we meet that are in an Easter process. They've become fastened to something that's torturing their heart, their mind, their body, and they need us to help them rise again. They need us to appear again, to make space so that they can become visible again, right? How many of us, I know for me, when I am really have something big going on that, carrying a big cross, I have a tendency to back up. So I need help in being visible again, right? Of engaging in life again, of appearing again, and unfastening myself from the cross. I can't always do that alone. I certainly have tools to do it alone. I certainly have prayer and meditation and denials and affirmations, and I need others. I believe we all do. So Easter for me, is about who are my peeps, right? Who are these disciples? Who are the beloveds that are helping me to appear, that can make a space so that I can become visible, that make a space so I can unfasten, right, the cross that I've become fastened to. And Simon is the same question. Simon, who's we know stepped out of the crowd in the way it's written in the Gospels to help carry the cross. So who are you being Veronica or Simon for? And bigger than that, in our lovely rugged individualism USA, who are you allowing to be Simon or Veronica for you? Right? Who are you allowing to be Simon or Veronica for you? Are you allowing someone to help unfasten from the cross? Who are you allowing to make space and help raise you up to be more visible? It's about letting someone into our most vulnerable places, very vulnerable places inside, and allowing them to help release the bindings, right? And allowing them to wipe our brow or moisten our lips or pay the phone bill or whatever. But who are you being Veronica or Simon for? And who are you allowing to be Simon or Veronica for you? Which I think is a bigger question, because I think, at least me, I was raised by, a father who was, you pull yourself up by your bootstraps. No, I'm good. I got it. Rather than moving to, asking for a Veronica, asking for a Simon. So this Easter, I invite you to be more conscious, to be more aware of Veronica and Simon, to be more aware of what a cross is. Not everything that's challenging is a cross, I don't think. And then also the crucifixion. What am I fastening to? What's been fastened to me? And I think if we do that, and not just Easter, but every day, and be more conscious of the Veronica, being Veronica and Simon, and allowing Veronica and Simons in our life, that we each become more powerful force for humanity. And by doing that, we're also stepping into this never-ending story of creation, never-ending story of hope, of new life, of new possibilities. I mean, how powerful are we for humanity if we begin to notice these things and kind of operate this way? Because for me, life always finds a way. With or without me, life finds a way. So I would like to engage that life much more conscientiously for a never-ending story of creation, of hope, of new life, and new possibilities that can't even be imagined, which I think is a glorious place to be. So let's take that idea of life always finds a way, and life finds a way of new possibilities through being Veronica, being Simon. Let's take that into meditation. If you're comfortable, you can close your outer eyes, or you can leave them open. But breathe. Let's breathe together. I call it a collective act of solidarity. Let's breathe. You don't have to change the pace of it. Just notice the breath coming in and filling the body, and then notice the breath leaving the body. And just continue to focus on the rhythm of the breath. And with every breath, notice the sensations in your body. Notice if there's a place where there might be some tension or contraction. Or maybe some pain, an ache. Or a sense of vulnerability. Just gently, with the breath, move through the body and see if there is a place of discomfort. When you find that, offer yourself tenderness. Remember, there is one presence and one power. And we are fully human and fully divine. We are that tenderness that we offer to ourselves inside our body. And remember, we are that tenderness that we offer to another. So when you find that place in your body that has some tension or contraction. What might it be fastened to? What might it be tied to? What might it be bound by? And with the next breath, imagine yourself untying it, offering tenderness and grace. And now bring to mind someone in your life that may be in an Easter journey, maybe in a time of suffering or anguish or pain or grief, physically, mentally, or emotionally, in any capacity. Imagine a person you know. Bring their face to mind. And breathe. And as you see their face in your mind, just imagine as you breathe in and breathe out, you are making space for their own reappearing, for their own loosening of the ties. See yourself wiping their brow, so to speak. Now let's take a couple of breaths together. Inhale and exhale. And once again, remembering we are fully human and fully divine. Just scan through your body one more time. See if you find a place of peace, of joy, of compassion, of caring. Where in your body do you feel that? Maybe there's an opening in the chest and the heart space, a loosening of the shoulders. And because you are fully divine, when you find that place of compassion, of peace, of joy, of love, intentionally grow that. Feel it move throughout the body. See it expanding beyond you. Because life always finds a way. And we are making that way. And so it is, as we bring our attention back to our Zoom space, just gently look around at, if you can see the little faces in the boxes, just silently look around and acknowledge them. That these are your peeps. These are your Veronicas and your Simons. and we go forth and we be it. Amen and amen.